Hello friends, today I am here to discuss a very important point that is going on in today's time, and that is isolation related to or quarantine related to coronavirus. Please understand that the quarantine related to coronavirus is a very good thing, but it is affecting people, how it affects the people mentally and how it is giving a drastic effect on people. Let us discuss that in this particular video. In today's time when coronavirus is on top, we are listening that so many people are kept in isolation and so many people have been quarantined in home, right? But do you understand the effects of quarantine and how it is going to affect mentally to the people that are over there? So before going forward with this topic, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and please stay updated by turning on the notifications. I am going to discuss such topics which are not being covered in any media on a normal basis. People are concentrated about breaking the chain and they are concentrated about the outward movement of the people, but they are not concentrated on the mentality and the mental and psychological status of the people who are under isolation and who are undergoing quarantine right now. So let me take your attention towards that. As a part of breaking the chain in corona, it is utmostly important that any person who has been detected or who has been found positive to COVID-19, or any person who has been detected a positive case and he is in contact with a positive case of corona, has continued the chain of infection. And as many social media and channels are showing, that the chain is so big that if you go through a chronological of any one case, a single affected case has affected everybody in the family, has affected the doctors and GPs they have visited, they have affected the patients they have visited that GP, and they have also affected their localities as well as all the transport medium that they have used so far. Can you understand the seriousness of this particular disease or droplet infection that is caused in this particular disease? And because of this, isolation is absolutely compulsory and self-quarantine is the best way to do that. And that is why you have to stay self-quarantined. Now, this is not a problem with the people who are self-limiting their movement in the family and self-limiting their movement in the house. But it is more of a problem who are in quarantine wards or quarantine facilities, or those people who are kept in isolation in wards in hospitals. Let us understand what is their mental status when they are undergoing this particular process. The first thing I am going to discuss in this is the negative effects of and mental effects of quarantine facility. This is based on a study published in the Lancet in February 2020, which has been studied by scientists and psychologists, and they have published this study, right? There have been previously also many studies have been done by the King's College London about the effects of isolation in previous times also, when the time of H1N1 and swine flu was present, right? So let us go through what is this. So what happens when you keep a patient in quarantine, right? The first thing he can undergo is he can undergo stress disorder, and he can even undergo confusion and aggression, right? So what happens, how this is happening, let me explain you very quickly, right? The person can go into confusion if he is not knowing why he has been restricted or why his movement has been restricted in the surrounding or in the society. He has to understand why he is not allowed and why he is kept in isolation or quarantine. Number one thing is that. The second thing is the person can get aggressive, because when he is kept in quarantine, probably if he is addicted to something and he is not getting the thing that he is addicted to, it can give him aggression. Secondly, normally when you are ill, we seek the presence of our near and dear ones nearby. But in this condition, when the person is ill and he doesn't know what is happening with him and he is even isolated, so he feels that he is confined to something and he cannot communicate with the people. And this is the second thing that definitely gives a lot of aggression in the people. Third thing is the post-traumatic stress disorder or the post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic doesn't mean a trauma that is physical or that is mental. This is even getting diagnosed for having corona and then shifting to the ward is also acting as a mental trauma for any patient who is been isolated or who is being quarantined, right? So you have to understand that over here also, when the person is kept in isolation, this acts as a trauma for the patient, and the patient starts feeling feelings of mental distress. The patient starts feeling low in his psychological pattern. He has mood swings. He can have panic attacks. He can have anger attacks, right? So all these things start happening. The patient can even become aggressive. So these are certain things that are very much important. Now please understand why these things happen. The first thing is that the patient is in a feeling of fear. The patient doesn't know what is going to happen with him, and is he going to die? What he feels is, am I going to die, or am I going to have the worst type of end of life? And so he starts feeling fear inside him. Second thing he starts feeling is the feeling of nervousness. As you remove the patient from the surrounding locality and the social circle, human are social animal, and when they are removed out of the social circle, they obviously start feeling nervous. If you make a person sit alone in one particular place for 10 minutes and you just keep on observing him, he will become conscious. We know this fact as for sure. So when you keep a person alone in the bed and he is left out, and he is left out with 10 people surrounding in completely covered dresses and looking at him, he cannot even have a face-to-face contact with the person. The person definitely starts feeling nervous and starts going into depression. The third thing he feels is sad. The sadness comes because he feels that I am not well, I am ill, I am not feeling good, and yet my family members are not in my contact, and I cannot contact my family members. That is also a bigger thing that starts affecting the person. The next feeling that is very important and most harassing is the guilt feeling. When you see the media people today, they are outrightly blaming people that this person has infected 200 other people, this person has infected 200 other people. If in your family, if your kid or your spouse blames you for one small thing also, that heaviness of that blame is in your head even right now when I am speaking to you, right? So when you tell a person who is already isolated, who is not in a good condition, he is not with his family members, he is away from the society, and then he listens that he is being blamed for infected another 200 or 250 people, what will be the feeling? Can you just imagine about that person? So stop blaming the person, because until and unless he was diagnosed for having COVID-19, he himself also didn't know that he was having COVID-19 positive, right? So yes, this is not for those people who have arrived from outside and they know that for sure I have come from outside and I might have COVID-19, and they do not get themselves checked, or they do not self-quarantine them, and they start going to public meetings. This is not for those people. This is for those people who were rather not knowing that they are having COVID-19 and they are exposed to COVID-19, and then they are kept into isolation, and then they are kept quarantined. And when you say that this person went to sit this places and he has infected another 200 or 250 or 300 people, it is a heavy emotional load of guilt on that person, which can lead to suicidal tendencies in the person, which we can see in certain cases where people suffering from COVID have attempted suicide, and there are few people who have even done suicide also. So please do not overload these feelings. Now, how these feelings increase? If the person is getting faulty news, or is he's getting wrong news about the disease, even that can increase his nervousness, his fear, his sadness and his guilt, right? And he can even end up into post-traumatic stress, right? Or if the person is not being aware, right? If you don't give him sufficient facilities, staying away from home, also if he is not getting food on time, or if he is not taken care on time, or if the doctor is not informing him about his condition, then also the person can go further into depression and further into stress and further into nervousness, right? And the last thing in this is, if the patient is not counseled properly about his condition and about the conditions of the family members and the society at all and the world at all, the person is going to get saddened, and he is going to get further more depressed, because he thinks that his sacrifice should help other people. So when you keep him informed that with your isolation, your family members have got the disease but they are in quarantine and they are recovering, and there are other people who are not getting the disease, he becomes positive about it. So now, after knowing this much about the effects of isolation and quarantine, let us work on what is the solution to this. And again, the solution is discussed in the study published in Lancet February 2020, and the solution is also being proposed by the researchers and psychologists from King's College, London. All these psychologists have done a lot of research and they have come to a conclusion with certain things. The first thing they said was that you have to educate the patient about why he is being isolated or why he is being quarantined and why the family should stay quarantined. If they are educated, we cannot take it as granted that they have been listening the news and they know what is to be done and so they will take care themselves. No. Other than that, as a part of counseling also, they must be educated that why isolation in quarantine is important. The number two is you have to show them the positive effects of quarantine. You have to make them understand that if you go out in the community and you infect another 200 and 250 or 300 people unknowingly, it is unknowingly, not knowingly. It is better that you stay inside, and if you get better in these 14 days, you recover from the virus in 2 to 3 weeks and you go back home, you will be returning home safely, positively, and you will not even increase the infection in the community. So thereby you are breaking the chain, you are repairing it, and then you are reconnecting, which is better than becoming a chain of spread of this particular infection. So this is second thing that is very important. The third thing, most important, is you have to keep the patient up to date. You have to keep him up to date about his condition, his treatment process, his recovery, and how many days of quarantine is important. That is very much important, so that he is mentally prepared that I have to be in this status for 2 to 3 weeks. If you do not define the state of quarantine, the patient might get uneasy and he might get aggressive and depressed at the same time. Right? So be sure that you inform the patient about his recovery, his condition, the recovery of the other people connected to him, and how his quarantine has helped people to recover better and well because he was more infected, and how long it will take. If you are going to extend the time of quarantine or isolation, inform him why it has been extended and what are the reasons that we are extending it and how it is going to help him out. So this update is very much important. So the first thing is educate the patient. Second is show him the positive output of this quarantine or isolation. Update him about the condition. Then let him be in touch with the family members. You have to give him good internet connection and you have to give him the mobile that he was using, or you have to give him things to communicate with the family members indirectly. If you cannot meet them physically, let him meet them on YouTube calling or on video calls or on Skype or etc. You have to provide him. Do not devoid him from all the social media or all the gadgets also, because if you divide the patient from his gadgets also, he will be left alone and he will go further into depression because he has nothing to do. On the contrary, when the person gets in contact with the family, his mental status rises, which will rise his immunity and which will make him better. So please understand, according to the psychoneuroimmunology studies, when a person's mental status is in depression, his immunity also gets depressed and he ends up into further infection and further loss of hope towards life. And when the person is feeling happy, he has a release of happy chemicals which actually elevate his immunity. This has been proved by psychoneuroimmunology since 1971. So you have to allow permit the patient to be in contact with the family members and the friends with whatever way he can, that is digital. You should not allow him to stay in touch physical or face to face, but digitally that is absolutely possible. Last thing is you have to let the patient use social media, because locally he is using social media that is giving him global presence. A global presence keeps him informed about the extent of disease globally. It also gives him a chance to appear and communicate with the people, and he can communicate his experience with the people also. So please understand these things, that what are the effects of isolation or quarantine. The first and the foremost, the main effect is the patient is undergoing depression, he can have PTSD type of symptoms, he can be in confusion, he can be in aggression, and he can be in a feeling of fear, guilt, sadness, or a feeling of nervousness also, including post-traumatic stress, right? And the ways to come out is, number one, you have to educate the patient about his condition, you have to show him the positive effects of his isolation or quarantine, and you have to keep him up to date about what is going on with him and around him, right? Beyond that, you have to let him stay in touch with the family members with all the precautions through the electronic media, and you should also permit him to go on social media so that he doesn't feel isolated or alone in that facility. So please take care of these things, please avoid blaming these people, and we are going to make the world a better place by recovering these people, breaking the chain, and not fearing about going into isolation or quarantine or self-quarantine. Please do not fear about this. I will very soon share a video with what are some of the creative things that you can do when you are in quarantine. There are so many creative things that you can do in this 2 to 3 weeks of phase when you have to be locked down in the house, right? So do not worry that because the socio-economic status is not going to affect only you, it is going to affect the whole world. So you need not worry about what is going to happen if I don't do. Whatever you can do from the house, you should do. You should work from home wherever and whatever possible. But beyond that point, restrict yourself and find out ways how to keep yourself busy and keep your inner feelings high. So start calling your relatives when you are in the home and when you are self-restricted. Go for video calls of hours and hours with your friends who are abroad and with your friends who are present locally. Stay in touch with everybody and support those families through video callings who are quarantined in your locality or in your area. You have to keep their motivation high. So be in touch with them also, and do not let the person feel lonely or in the feeling of guilty. Take care. We are doing this for our society. If you protect yourself, you are protecting the society. Take care. Bye bye. See you in the next talk.